Now we would like to introduce our composer, Astrinidis.
So at this moment we're going to have a short discussion, questions and answers with the composer, and we're going to be having some musical interludes in between of songs and piano solos. Maestro, tell us about what prompted you to start composing.
First of all, I would like to apologize because my English is not good enough to express whatever I wanted to. But I shall try. Why did I start to compose and how?
Yeah, what prompted you to?
I must say that the beginning was the hearing of the opera Rigoletto. I was born in a small town of Romania, Ackerman in Bessarabia, and we had a music school, a gymnasium and so on. And sometimes the opera from Bucharest was using to go from town to town to give some performances. And they arrived to our town. I was just a beginner in music. And I heard Rigoletto. I was so enthusiastic about it, so I wanted the next day to compose an opera. I didn't know even to write well the notes, but I tried to compose an opera. Of course, I understood in some days that it wasn't possible. So I understood also that I must study seriously the theories and everything in music if I wished really to be a composer. And so that was the beginning. After 2 years, more or less, that was at my 14th age. Yes. And at 16, I started my first composition, which I played many times there, in music school and so on, and everything says, it's wonderful, you'll be a great composer, and so on, so. But it was, of course, a childish thing, but it seems that there was something in it which my professors in the school told me, you must go on. So at the age of 16, yes, I composed one of my first composition which could be accepted by musicians and by public. It was a piece for violoncello and piano called Capriccio in Modo Balcanico. By the way, a week ago I was in Paris and they played some of my works, and they played this Capriccio as one of my first works. Then I went to Bucharest in the Conservatory Academy of Music. Because of the war, everything stopped. I was a refugee. I went in Middle East. I think you read maybe all my adventures during the war. I was in the army, on the front, and so on, so on, so. But I never stopped thinking of music, and I was trying to compose. In 1944, it was my first occasion to be, in a way, recognized by the music and musicians. It was a festival in Cairo, 1944, because as the Europe was occupied, almost all of Europe, the important musical festivals and everything was
moved
moved
moved to the
to
Middle East.
Cairo. So there was a festival and a competition. And I composed the Cyprus Rhapsody, which took the first prize as a composition. And as a pianist, I took also first prize. Then start this little first period, which I tried to understand the Greek music, because I must say in the youth, I only knew the Romanian folk music, which I used in my two Romanian rhapsodies, which were recognized in Bucharest and by my teacher there, Dinu Lipati, who was a very famous pianist and composer at that time. But I start to understand and to learn the Greek music only during the war. I never had occasion in Romania to listen, or especially I'm speaking about the folk music, because it was very funny that I was hearing sometimes my colleagues in the army singing some songs. And I was asked, is this the Greek music? Yes, yes. Is the popular music? Yes, yes. But popular music, laiki musiki, in Greece, doesn't mean the folklore music. It means the light music, which is called laiki musiki. So I used in my first rhapsody, Greek rhapsody, I used some of these themes, which are actually were themes, musical themes, Greek music, from operettas, from at that time. And I thought it was the Greek music. Fortunately, then after I met Mrs. Graciela Adams, who was a singer and pianist, student of Alfred Cortot, and she introduced me to the real Greek music. After that, my second rhapsody, Greek rhapsody, was really more Greek. Then in the Cyprus Rhapsody, I used really melodies from Cyprus, which I heard. I was wounded.
Okay.
I was wounded during the war in the desert, Libyan desert, and they sent me in Cyprus to a hospital there to relax. Recuperate. And so I heard many Cyprus music. So I had a good material, and for the first occasion I composed this rhapsody, and most of the pieces, short pieces at that time, Greek dance, variations on a Greek theme, and some others, were based on the my first approach to the real Greek music.
So we left in the Middle East, and then you started your career first in Paris and then throughout the world.
Yes.
So we left the first compositional period, and now we go towards Paris, Impressionism, and different forms.
Exactly. Then after my Cairo period, which you had two examples, and you will listen later, also a prelude for this period, which I think is my first step in the impressionist music. I can speak like that? So closer.
Yeah,
Then I went to Paris to finish my studies in music, which I couldn't finish in 40 because of the war. I was accepted in the Schola Cantorum, where I took my diplomas, pianist and composition. And then I start almost immediately
touring around the world.
Touring around the world as a soloist, as a recitalist, and also mostly with very big artists of that time, violinists and violoncelists and singers. I even accompanied Lily Pons. I don't know if somebody remember this name. She was a very famous coloratura soprano at that time. And I played with Jacques Thibault, with Christian Ferras, with Henry Schering, very big violinist, and violoncellist Bernard Michelin. And it gave me an experience of the instruments which I was collaborating, violin and violoncello. So mostly of my important instrumental composition are based on this knowledges I took from this big artists at that time. But the most important event in my life at that time was when I went for the first time in Greece, because I didn't knew the Greece, my countryland, as I was born in Romania and during the war, etc. And my parents were refugees in Salonika. In 51 or 52, I don't remember, I went for the first time to visit them, and I visited the Church of Saint Demetrius. I was so impressed, so immediately I had the idea to write something about Saint Demetrius. And my first composition about this subject was a symphonic prelude, which is called Saint Demetrius. That was in 52. And it was played in Paris and in Greece. And then suddenly I had the idea to write an opera about Saint Demetrius. And I collaborated with a very big poet at that time in Salonika, George Temelis. And I wanted to compose an opera. But I was told that it's not very convenient to have a saint on the scene appearing and singing, so I changed it in oratorio. That was in 57 or 58. I started to compose this oratorio, but I couldn't go on very fastly because I was traveling all around the world giving concerts. I forgot to tell you that I was staying in Paris for 20 years at that time. But suddenly in 62, they called me from Greece, from the Ministry of Northern Greece, and as they knew that I was composing something about Saint Demetrius, and they asked me, is it finished? Is it finished? I told them, why? What happened? But 62, it's 50 years from the liberation of Salonika, from the Turks. And they wanted to play on this occasion on 26th October, which is the day of the Saint Demetrius, to play the first performance of this oratorio. Unfortunately, at that time I composed only maybe a fourth of the oratorio. But the idea was so splendid for me that I told, yes, I finished it. That actually, I had only a portion of it. Then I spoke with my impresario in Paris. I told him to abandon some of my tours, and I stayed in 3 or 4 months. I composed 3/4 of the oratorio instead of 1/4, which I composed in 3 or 4 years. Finally, I came to Salonika in September 62, and then on the 26th October, which is the day of Saint Demetrius, which is the patron also of the town, they played, but something happened at that time. They played only a part of this oratorio, some fragments. And the first full performance of the work was on 1966, which was the first year of the festival of Thessaloniki, which has the name of Dimitria, from the patron of the town. Then it was first time it was composed. You heard only a little portion of the finale, which is performed from in Romania, from Orchestra George Enescu, choirs and soloists from the Opera of Bucharest. But the recording is not very good. So that was for me the beginning of most important things I think I composed. It means the oratorios, which after St. Demetrius followed 7 another oratorios, big oratorios, not only on the religious theme. It was one of the last oratorios. It was about Alexander the Great. And I composed also a symphony with choir about the Greek Revolution in 1821. That is, I think, my real way. I found my real way in composition, in the big works with orchestra, choir, soloist, and so on.
I have a question for you, Maestro.
Of course, if I can answer.
And that is, you discussed different influences that influence you to compose music. Like, for example, the Church of St. Demetrius. Has there ever been a soloist, like such as a violinist, that inspired you to write a solo work for them?
I didn't get it.
Ένα κομμάτι για ένα βιολίστη, κάποιον
Ένας
που...
βιολιστής,
Ναι.
είπατε ότι έχετε επηρεαστεί από τον impressionismo, από την Λυκουσία, αλλά
Ναι,
κάποιος συγκεκριμένος εκτελεστής να σας έχει εμπνεύσει για να γράψετε
Και ποιοι που ήρθε είναι.
I think the one who impressed me, influenced me very much, was the celloist Bernard Michelin, the French one of the best at that epoch. And actually, I was in Paris, as I told you before, some 10 days ago, and it was a big concert in his honor. He died some months ago. And I played also for his memory.
service.
And one of his best people, who is the soloist of the French orchestra, national orchestra, played my Capriccio, one of my composition from the year.
The first one you
The
mentioned.
first one, yes. He played it in the public, for in the memory of Bernard Michelin. I think, and then, I forgot that, yes, of course. One of my concerto for violin was inspired by the Henry Schering, very known violinist, and from the composer Aram Khachaturian and his violin concerto. I think they impressed me so much, and I composed my concerto for violin.
And of course, you were influenced by Dinu Lipati, who is your composer.
Yes, Dino Lipati especially influenced me in the piano playing. His theory was that you must be always very relaxed and to play music, to play piano like a singing, which fortunately, especially in our epoch, that's my opinion, of course, the pianists play too hard, the sound is too metallic. Dino Lipati was always saying the sound of the piano must sing, not to be a
Percussion
percussion instrument.